Thank you, Carlos. When I was asked to give the keynote, one of the primary points was don't talk about the future and don't talk about where it's going. Talk about how it's been realized and where it is today. So that's what I'm going to cover, right? First, a little bit about core, right? We are a pure play IoT player, so not smartphones, not smartwatches, maybe a little bit of smartwatches. But my focus and our company's focus is around helping customers deploy, manage, and scale IoT solutions, right? So now what I talk next will be the adoption of eSIM in the IoT world and how that's taking off and what's happening there, okay? So how do you think about eSIM promise being realized? You think you get fascinated with the technology, you want to adopt it, and then, something hits the fan and you are struggling, right? So you need to think strategically. You need to define how you want to deploy eSIM because it's going to change your business process completely, right? Today you had a business process where you had a smart meter installer going to a site with 2 SIMs and deploying one of them, checking the signal strength, deploying the second one, making sure that's the primary. That process is changed now. Now they will go and the eSIM will take care of that process. Your logistics process will change, right? You had devices coming in, then SIMs being attached to those devices, and then you were shipping them out. That may not be needed anymore, right? So the whole process the deployment model needs to be changed. You need to think a little more ahead of that. Management will completely change, right? You adopt an eSIM, now you want to do we have a customer who's doing a bulk switch of 750,000 SIMs. Oh, is there a tool to do that? Is there a tool to do that in bulk? It doesn't exist. It should exist, right? So we've realized that 2 years ago we didn't have anything to support them. Now we have a tool to do bulk orchestration, right? What are the technology options out there? Whether will you use the consumer standard? Will you use the IoT standard? Right? How will you do this orchestration? What are the technical touch points that will get added because now you have to look at an eSIM, right? And then finally, yes, you'll need to think connectivity, but where are you going in the world? Where are your SIMs getting deployed? Is it global? Is it more localized? What is the SIM being used for? Is it being used as an insurance that I will deploy everything on my favorite carrier? And then suddenly the pricing change on me, so I need to change out. That's one model. The other model could be I need global coverage, I need a single SKU, I'll deploy it, and then wherever I land in the world, I'll deploy the right. There could be many use cases for eSIM, so you need to have that connectivity strategy in mind as you deploy your eSIM. Okay. Just a refresher, what is a traditional SIM versus an eSIM? People think eSIM in the way they think that it's just software. Yes, there is an element of that, but you can get an eSIM in a plastic form. That what changes is the profile that's available now, software over the air, right? So you look at traditional SIMs, you had the card, you had the profile on it, everything attached. Now you have an eSIM, it can come in any form, can be soldered on your device, it can come as a blob, a piece of software in your chipset, or it can be a traditional plastic, but what is over the air is the profiles that you can download as part of the eSIM, right? So that's the main difference in a traditional SIM versus eSIM. Okay, where is it headed? I think there's been a lot of talk in the market on eSIM. There have been people selling eSIMs, and the way it has been done is, okay, there's a SIM card with a profile which has a roaming which has an IMSI, which has a roaming arrangement globally, and that ended up being called eSIM, or it had 2 IMSIs inside it, and that became the model for eSIM. And soon that started to fail, right? Because when you do that, there are carriers who do business with each other and they change the roaming contracts, and then you're impacted, right? So the way we are seeing it headed is you will still have a bootstrap or a local or a profile that can support you globally, right? But then you should be able to download a local profile on it. So let me give you an example. So Core has a profile which is composed of 3 IMSIs, right? So you can take that profile, operate globally. Let's say you are a company that manufactures washing machines, right? And you are shipping it to so many countries. Now you go there, boot, it will connect to that network because the Core profile can connect to 600 networks. It will connect, it will say, hey, I've woken up in Australia, what do? The best option for you is to download a local Telstra profile and then operate. And that's what will happen. That's the model, that's the true nirvana for eSIM, and it's there now. A lot of Core and a lot of other companies are offering that, of course. I will say that Core has the best product, right? Let me give you a real example, right? Supero they do drone-based deliveries, right? We had them last year at MWC showcasing some of this. They do drone-based deliveries of medical assets in remote locations, and they do it globally, right? So they wanted to have a model where they don't have to worry about which connectivity is used in their drones. And lo and behold, we offered them an eSIM from Core, can operate globally. They didn't need a local profile to be downloaded, just the Core connectivity was enough for them, and that's how we operated them. So pretty cool use case. But I had promised Carlos, I'll make it real. So let's make it real, right? Okay. Okay, so I think they are merging, right? Slowly they are coming together, so which will allow, if you have the option to download at will from like a smartphone does, you should be able to do that with an API call, right? So that's the second bit I will say on the future. We have one more functionality which we didn't get to, is chip to cloud security. So SIM is not only powerful in the way it is designed or in eSIM, but it also has a secure element, and using that secure element to do authentication on a cloud provider is also very, very powerful, and we are about to launch that feature. So I think we have, as an industry, we've come to a mature point in terms of technology. Now it's all about operationalizing it, getting more and more carriers on board an eSIM so that everybody can start reaping the power. And then 5G will come in, it will start changing the nature of use cases that you will see, and then suddenly you will see a lot more demand on a product roadmap for eSIM. But strengthening the tool set behind it, strengthening your processes, I think it's early days to tell you what the roadmap will look like till I see, 1,000 use cases, different use cases deployed on it. So that's where I think the future will be.
Right, thanks for your presentation. I would just like to ask, what is the form factor do you use the most in your projects, plug-in or solder it?
Yeah, we are seeing your standard form factors in the form of plastic being used because people are swapping out their plastic SIMs with an eSIM. It depends on the spectrum at which you attack the problem, right? You can attack the problem all the way at a chipset level, right, and put an eSIM blob. And that, in my mind, even if I get an agreement with one of these providers right now, right, it will come into their product life cycle 2 years later and inside a device a few more years later, right? So that's the least in terms of deployment. The soldered SIM is coming, but again, it's a device life cycle problem. If I again get an agreement, it will be a year or two before I see it. Now smartphones are there, right? So they've adopted iPhone 14 is only eSIM, right? But it's a soldered piece on their equipment. And then the third is the plastic SIM, which is what is being adopted because you're at the different end of the spectrum. The application provider or the end user is swapping out your traditional plastic with an with an eSIM plastic, and that adoption is starting to increase. So it's stages where you attack the problem, but right now it's the plastic which is winning, right? It'll not be as devices get matured, it'll go into the soldered version, and then way out in the future it'll be a blob and it'll be ubiquitous.
Hi. This sounds to me a bit like a power shift from the carriers to the OEMs. So I'm wondering what your experience has been with the response of carriers here in the US.
Yeah, look, we have strong relationship with 24 carriers globally, right? And yes, I would say there was resistance in the beginning, but now they realize that, this is where the world is going and we better adapt to it, right? Power shift, I think the power shift is shifting to the user more than anybody else, right? Because now you're controlling your own destiny. You can say, don't change the pricing on me or I'll switch the profile, right? So the power shift is happening, but I think the MNOs, the large ones, have learned and they are adopting this, right? Instead of shying away from it, right? For example, Core will have, by next month, we'll have our SIM with not only a roaming profile, but also AT&T, which is already available, and Verizon, which will be available. And by end of the year, potentially a Telstra profile available. These are the, trust me, these are the big guys whom working with whom is a serious challenge in terms of getting sign-off from the top down to their security team, to their operational team, to this team, to that team, and I don't know how many teams they have that you have to navigate and get it done. But that's happening, right, which is a good sign. This is one in the front.
Hi, this is Milind. So I wanted to ask about the chip to cloud feature you talked about. So is it based on GSMA IoT Safe?
It is based on GSMA IoT
Okay.
Safe, and
Thank you.
we've partnered with our friends at AWS and soon Google. And what we are doing is the secure element on the cloud is being used to pull a certificate from your certificate authority and deposit on your device. And then your device can talk in a secured manner. So what happens is, if you're doing this in a normal fashion, right, talking about making it real and operational, today you will send a list of certificates with your device manufacturer and they'll start deploying the certificates at the time of manufacturing. It's a very cumbersome process, right? How do you replace these certificates? To avoid that whole thing, this provides you a real-time way of doing it in a very, very secured manner using the security of the SIM and not a spreadsheet being floated around or a piece of paper being floated around. So yes, we've used the GSMA IoT Safe standard. There's one more here. I told Carlos I'll finish in 24 minutes, so there'll be no questions, but I finished in 10, and this is good. This is much better than just me talking.
Regarding the management of the SIM, once you pull down a new profile, what happens to the old one? Does it stay there? Does that mean that a consumer can have two accounts now with Verizon, AT&T? They got to pay the bill every month, or do you deactivate the other one?
You can suspend it. It depends on your use case. You can suspend and throw it off. You can deactivate. You can even delete it. You can keep it there in some state for resilience purposes, or you can keep it active if your use case demands that I need both active at the same time. I'm ready to pay that premium, but I need to do it simply because it'll help me in a use case where cost is not such a big deal. So you can do all of the above. If there is one.
Hi, thank you so much. For companies who deploy products with larger life cycles, 5 to 10 years, it'll take some time to get the next product out, to put an eSIM inside of it. Do you have any clever or collaborative strategies to help companies with devices that might be out for another 5 to 10 years swap out SIM cards?
From the current EUICC swapping out if it's an offshore rig, unfortunately not, because there is no clear way unless it was an EUICC. But now you're secured. Once you do that, then you can assure that the swap out won't be a problem going forward. But in the current setup, that may be not an easy option to think through. But again, depends on the use case, and I'm sure there's a smart solution engineer who can work that problem out in a different way. Okay. All right, thank you very much.